Welcome everyone to Dr. John Bedker's Leadership Podcast, the podcast focused on leadership. The episode will begin shortly. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the podcast.
Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Dr. John Bedker Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, John Bedker. Well, there is a lot going on, perhaps too much, right? We're overloaded with events, activities, turbulence, chaos. We are living in a very, very challenging world. I've spent the last several podcasts talking about this globally. I thought I would take some time today to talk about it locally, to give a real-life example from a real person doing exemplary leadership. And to be particular, this is a person who has passed. He has, past tense, given his life to exemplary leadership. Many of you may know, as an undergraduate, I went to the U.S. Naval Academy. It's one of the high points of my life. Formative, transformational. Those of you that know me know that I speak about it highly. It is, I believe, the greatest undergraduate school in the world. Now, sounds like hyperbole. Sounds like a happy graduate. Well, it is. But it's so much more, because deep down I truly believe that. Because beyond being this incredible academic institution, the Naval Academy developed you in other ways. The mind for sure, but the heart and the soul. Those things like character, integrity, honesty, a firm commitment to the truth and facts. These things go well beyond just the academic education, which certainly brought those in to the courses, but the experience of being a midshipman at the U.S. Naval Academy operationalized, brought into focus and structure these qualities beyond an academic education. Well, recently, I received an email, caused me to pause and think about this again. Frankly, as I've done so many times in my life. Now, more than 50 years since my graduation. I'm going to read a little excerpt of the recent email I received, which prompted me to really focus on this today. And then I'm going to read a little bit from an article written by a classmate of mine, a person that graduated in the same year as I did, who wrote about the person I intend to speak about today, Frederick Richard Minier, a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, class of 1973. Here we go. From the email, just a short excerpt. Through our past and current commitments, that's each of us that are graduates of the class of 73 at Navy, our class has continued to provide a margin of excellence, funding throughout the yard, effectively is the campus. Of special interest now is an ethics fellow position in the name of Fred Minier. This fellow position in ethics will be at the Stockdale Center for Leadership. Obviously, what this podcast is all about. The email went on to say, there may be no other combination of significant impact to today's midshipmen, tomorrow's leaders for the nation, than the Stockdale Center and the class of 1973 Fred Minier Ethics Fellow. There are some similarities here and the email details them. I'll just give a quick highlight about this common ground between what the goals and aspirations of the Stockdale Leadership Center are, its mission, and what this new ethics fellow position is all about. One, both are born of philanthropy and would not exist without private support. So we're not publicly funded, doing anything like that. It's out of the kindness and goodness of alumni and friends and families to say, we want to support this. Both are connected to our class, the class of 1973. This person, Fred Menier, gave our class crest. He's the designer. And our class motto, Non Sibi. Jim Stockdale provided us with a living role model for physical and moral courage. Many of us wore a POW bracelet. You can remember that way back when? Bearing the name, and cheered when he and his fellow POWs returned home in 1973. Both exemplify the timeless leadership and character lessons required for today and tomorrow's commissioned officers. And I certainly would expand that to each and every one of us. Not just those in uniform, but certainly those in uniform, but so many more. Together, these serve as critical pillars in the moral, mental, and physical development of a midshipman. That's the case I make for, we're a great academic institution, but so much more. This is just I'll read one quick excerpt. It's a testimonial from a company officer, a person in charge of a group of midshipmen at the Naval Academy who was impacted by the Stockdale Center. He took a course there, not important, called NE 203, as in Naval Ethics. NE 203 was an important part of my character development as a midshipman. Having been both a civilian philosophy professor and a military instructor with fleet experience, allowed the course to be academically sound while including practical applications. In order to discuss the most challenging of these moral challenges, I had to think about my practical profession of arms. This class was a great opportunity to discuss the ethics of making right decisions on a daily basis as a naval officer. The virtue-based part of the course enabled me to serve honorably in the submarine force. This was just a quick attribute by a company officer, Lieutenant Kevin Ernest, 26th Company officer. So this new position, the Fred Menier Ethics Fellow position, really is this connection to ethics, to courage, to integrity, and certainly to leadership. So now I'd like to read again just excerpts from the article that appeared way back when, long time ago, back in May of 1975. It was about the loss of Fred Menier. We'd only graduated less than 2 years earlier, and he passed away. I'll start off with something about the loss. Ensign Frederick Menier died on 30 May 1975 as a result of an air embolism occurred in a diving accident alongside his ship, the USS Sampson, a DDG, off Taormina, Sicily. While checking the underwater hull of the ship with another officer and an enlisted man from ship's company, Ensign Menier came to the assistance of the officer who had been caught in the intake of the forward main condenser. After having freed the officer, Ensign Menier was himself caught in the intake with simultaneous loss of his breathing apparatus. When the enlisted man endeavored to assist him, Ensign Menier, with complete disregard for his own personal safety, activated the other man's flotation device, forcing him to the surface and safety. As a result of his heroic action, Ensign Menier succumbed in the condenser intake. Okay. Terrible story. But already we get that meaning behind who he was. Non Sibi. Not for self. Okay. From a classmate of mine, Ken Mayhew, another 1973 Naval Academy graduate. He wrote an article called A Life Remembered, and I'll read pieces from it now, to make this point about how critical, how important it is to really and truly, as a leader, not be for self, but for others. Here we go. A little over 30 years ago, I, along with 892 of my closest friends, threw away my well-used midshipman's cover, put on a shiny new officer's cap, paid $1 to the first salute I received, and headed out to meet my destiny. I was feeling pretty good and proud of myself, with my Naval Academy class ring wrapped around my finger, forever signifying me as a member of the graduating class of 1973. Little did I realize that day would be the last time this brotherhood would be whole. I gave little thought to exactly what the commitment we made on that day would mean. I am pretty sure I was not alone in that respect. Frederick McNair entered the Naval Academy from Culpeper, Virginia, in June of '69, and along with 1,380 other individuals, Fred was a small man, just barely exceeding the minimum height and weight standards. His plebe year was difficult, as the first class, those are the seniors, charged with his indoctrination, seemed to have already concluded that Fred was not officer material. Obviously, they did not know then that the measure of this man was not determined by his physical stature. Fred's future shipmates would learn the magnitude of his being and the principles by which he lived and gave his life. I hope by writing this brief story that present and future alumni will know how one of my classmates upheld the class of 1973 motto, Non Sibi. Fred's 4 years by the Severn were not grist for development of Tom Clancy's character, Jack Ryan. However, they were significant in shaping the man he was to become. The vivid memories of successes and failures during our tenure there remain crystal clear through time, even as recollections of other events in our lives fade. I am sure they were no different for Fred. After a difficult plebe year, that's that first year, freshman year, as a 23rd Company Tiger, Fred settled into the relatively easy life as a youngster, as a sophomore, in 15th Company. He was busy with the routine of the academy, but his true love was his art and fascination with history. He was truly a Renaissance man. destined for a higher calling, while the rest of us were just happy to make it to Saturday and a precious few hours to ourselves. It was during this early shaping at the U.S. Naval Academy that Fred designed the class crest for the class of 1973. If my memory serves me well, and nowadays it's always a pleasant surprise, when I first saw our class crest, I thought it looked good. It was a worthy crest for the class of 73, of which I was a proud member. After all, I had endured the hardships of plebe year. I was pretty full of myself as a young man of 20 years, but I had no clue to its significance and obviously how deeply it was rooted in Fred's psyche. Further still, much of it would come to mean to our class of some many years later as we reflected back on our lives and the choices made to service of self and service to others. So this article goes on. It continues. It makes point after point about the life of service, not to self, but service to others. I think that's really our message today in this podcast, for each and every one of us to take time to be clear in this very troubled, very turbulent and chaotic world, that we are here not for self-aggrandizement. That is not what leaders do. We are here to serve others. Non Sibi, not for self, rather service to others. Little piece from the article again. Life is full of choices. Some are easy and straightforward, requiring almost no forethought. Others require an instantaneous decision that will have a profound outcome for the decision maker and others. None of us know what choice we will make when faced with that circumstance. To quote General Charles Krulak, he was the commandant of the United States Marine Corps, "Of all the choices you will face, there is none greater than the choice between self or selflessness." On the morning of 30 May 1975 in Taormina, Sicily, Ensign Fred Minier made his choice without hesitation. So, here was a person, perhaps of indistinguished exemplar, had a tough first year at the Naval Academy. But he was building himself into a human being of character, of quality, of integrity, not for self, but of others. So, what happens when a person like that then goes into the fleet, goes into their first job, so to speak, following graduation? Well, this person now, fully developed, graduated, is able to put these skills, who he was, these leadership competencies, to work each and every day. His fellow officers and the enlisted members he saw and oversaw absolutely admired and respected him, because he was not for self, rather for others. Let me read the citation of his passing. While engaged in diving operations in Taormina, Sicily, 30 May 1975, a diver in Ensign Minier's party was sucked against the main condensing intake. Ensign Minier, with complete disregard for his own safety and fully aware of the personal dangers involved, unhesitatingly swam to his assistance and freed the stricken diver. As a result of his heroic efforts, Ensign Munir was himself sucked up and lodged in the main condenser, with simultaneous loss of his breathing apparatus. The third diver in the party, attempting to aid Ensign Munir, was now himself in danger of being sucked into the condenser as well. At this time, Ensign Munir, again fully aware of the personal dangers involved with and complete disregard for his own safety, activated the last diver's flotation device, forcing him to the surface and safety. As a result of his heroic conduct, Ensign Munir succumbed in the condenser intake, gallantly sacrificing his life in order that his shipmates might live. His courageous and prompt actions in the face of certain death undoubtedly saved the lives of his fellow divers and were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Okay, so today in our really troubled and turbulent world, we take a moment to pause, to talk about a person of character, a person who was a leader, because it was not for self, non sibi, rather for others. This is a critical lesson, folks, in today's really, really challenging world. Not for self, but for others. Let's all remember that. Okay, thank you very much for tuning in. Sincerely appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Dr. John Bedker's Leadership Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please tell your friends, and, of course, please follow our podcast and subscribe. Thank you again for tuning in.